All right, here we go. All right, guys, everyone. Chris Patterson again. I'm blessed to be here with Matthew B Berg, who is the author of The Crafter's Son, the Crafter's Chronicles, and he's also has a novella out there called Monk's Tale that you can actually. Can you still get that for free, Matthew?
You sure can. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So, man, when
You
you
can
get
go to my website or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and by the way, everyone, I will put Matthew's website and Amazon and all of his social media stuff in the description below. So hopefully you want to check him out after after you watch this. And so scroll down, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, and then scroll down and visit Matthew's website and support him as an author. So Crafter's Son, great book, very, very well written. And for a lot of people out there, before we started the interview, we were just talking about the real need for some clean fiction, especially in the genre of fantasy. So if you're looking for something and you're kind of concerned about whether or not your 14-year-old or 12-year-old or 18-year-old, whoever can read it, or you're going to get a bunch of gore and sex and language, you can read The Crafter's Son. You can get a great story, and it's going to be clean and family friendly as well. So that's awesome. Matthew, when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer and an author?
Love the question. It takes me back. I don't know. I started to tell people about this interview, and this first question took me back to like kindergarten, first grade, and taking notebook paper and cutting it into squares and stapling the squares together and writing little books and writing little stories and a lot of people, I think, were doing that when we were kids, and even people who ultimately went on to other areas of life don't care really about reading and writing, but a lot of us share that story, and I certainly did, and I think I've always had it. As I got older, I think the first few books that I read that just absolutely just sucked me in, The Hobbit for me, and Sword of Shannara, Terry Brooks' Sword of Shannara, the first one there especially, but the first three just kind of blew me away, gave me an escape, and just writers who are visual, I think it made me, it took me to a place that most of the stuff you read in high school just doesn't take you,
Right.
it helps you truly experience it and get into it. So that was the early days, and some of the characters in A Crafter's Son, maybe not in exactly the same format, but some of those characters they were sketches from college. In grad school, I actually got my master's in creative writing, so
Nice.
So master's wise, I was ramping up to be a writer, and got a my master's thesis was basically a defense of fantasy genre writing. Nothing to say that a fantasy genre piece of work can't be as good as a literary fiction piece of work.
Totally.
Yeah, there you go. And I know people watching this probably appreciate that, because there's probably some fantasy fans here. So that was kind of a big deal for me. And I had a snippet of a novel in that is very similar to what The Crafter's Son has become. At the time, again, I thought I was going to be a writer. I thought I was going to be a novelist. I really wanted to do that. Out of grad school, I got a job as a writer. Of course, it was a tech writer, but I got a job as a writer. Over time, just because I was doing tech writing, my inner IT geek came out, and I became I started acquiring other IT skills. So I actually became like a webmaster, and I just kind of went all over the place. And I'm now an IT director for a law firm in Boston,
Okay.
and that's my day job. And it's a good job. I like it. We'll come back to that later with some of the other questions. But so I've had pretty varied background, but I never gave up on writing. And I'm divorced. I'm remarried now. I have 3 teenage boys, and whenever I could, I was always sneaking back to these stories and working on them and chipping away at them. And here I am 25 years later, and I'm still at it. So I think it's really gratifying for me. And so anyway, it's a long answer to a short question.
No, that's awesome. And unfortunately, I got my undergrad in creative writing, and so I feel your pain when it comes to the lack of respect that genre fiction, especially fantasy, gets.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate because there's some really well written, including your stuff, some really well written fantasy out there that I think is better than most mainstream fiction. So,
Amen. Thank you.
um, so you kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what was your draw to the fantasy genre? I'm assuming it sounds like even from an early age. So why fantasy?
It's a big answer. I like reading everything. I read heavy stuff. I'll read mysteries and thrillers sometimes. I'll read popular fiction. I read a ton of nonfiction. Um, I think that most writers out there who are really serious writers are big readers, and you know, I I don't. It's funny. I find that as I got older, I wasn't reading as much fantasy. Maybe because I felt like I tapped out a lot of the good stuff, and I was having a hard time finding new writers. And Amazon certainly saved that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for all of
Absolutely.
us,
Yeah.
right? I mean, talk about an opportunity for self-published authors to just all of a sudden become available for all of us. But
Yeah.
I will not go into naming names right now because I didn't prepare for that. But I mean, there's some great self-published writers out there. So
Absolutely.
just tap into this community, and they're out there. I guess for me, writing is like reading, and it does the same things for me. It allows me to escape, and it allows me to kind of immerse myself in a place where I'm not dealing with the day-to-day stuff. I don't have to worry about the things that are getting at me in the day-to-day. So I don't know, I don't know what it was. Something in me. I'm English and Scandinavian, so it's the swords and the shields and the
Yeah.
knights and the armor and the chivalry and the you know I I I was thinking about this question, and I played D&D. I have that actually in my bio on the back of the book, that I used to play D&D with my brothers, and I remember my my brothers and I buying it at Laureate's Books. Anybody who knows Laureate's Books from 100 years ago, and playing D&D, and for me, I could never play an evil character. I could never. I'm one of those guys who can't play a chaotic evil role. I know I have a lot of friends who love that. They like to kind of try on a different role in a game and play the evil guy. If I'm playing Baldur's Gate or D&D, I have to do the right thing. It's funny. So anyway, but I like that aspect of it. I like the kind of good winning out over evil. It doesn't have to be overly, it doesn't have to be every single good person's alive at the end of the book. Every single bad person's dead or defeated, or it doesn't have to be black and white. But I mean, those are things that I liked about fantasy, were that is an underlying element of the story, is that there's this good and evil that are at conflict, and not all mainstream stories, not all other genres go there, but it gives the stories a degree of black and whiteness that I liked,
Right.
and that I like to write. Life is pretty gray. I like to make my stories a little gray, but I want as much black and white and justice, and I want the messages in there and the positive stuff in there. So another long answer.
Right. I think the closest I ever got to playing an evil character was I dabbled with chaotic neutral once, and I even had a hard time playing that. So I empathize with that very much so when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, and briefly, like, I love thieves, so I love playing the halfling thief character who's picking the locks and picking the pockets, and that, for whatever reason, I'm okay with that on the morality
Right.
grade. But yeah, just not the chaotic evil hack slash guy.
Well, I don't know if you remember back in the day, well, it was, I think, only first edition. they had an assassin character class.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you had to be evil. And my parents, I played with my uncle, and my parents, that was one of the restrictions, was I was not allowed to be an
Not
assassin, right? So that was, yeah, good stuff. Um, so one of the questions that I get from a lot of people who haven't even published one book yet, you've got two. You've got, you showed me your author's copy of number 2 in the Crafters Chronicles. Awesome. Um, so there's a lot of people out there who are trying to do what we're doing, and I think a lot of writers get stumped with the whole writing process. Like, how is that supposed to look? And we use the term pantsers versus plotters a lot, right?
yeah.
Someone who just
Yep.
sits down and writes versus someone who outlines. And I know for myself, I've gone through that whole continuum. Um, what does your writing process look like, and would you consider yourself more of a pantser or more of a plotter? And in addition to that, I know that you have a full-time job also outside of writing, and so what does your daily schedule look like, and how do you do
Sure.
stuff?
Sure. So not only do I have a full-time job, but I am, married. I'm in my second marriage. I'm giving a lot of attention to that. I'm a newlywed. I'm not even married 2 years. I have 3 teenage boys, as I said. Um,
You're a busy guy.
So I have a lot going on, and it's IT director is a full-time job, right? So at a law firm. So yeah, I mean, pre-COVID, I have been able to use my commute. Is the straight answer, is that's when. I had an hour on the commuter rail into Boston every morning, and I had an hour on the commuter rail out of Boston. And if I wasn't so exhausted that I was falling asleep writing, I was writing in and out. And at some point, I over the years, I started writing The Crafter's Son in like 2007 in its current iteration, and I just couldn't. I was pantser, to answer your question, and I was. I wouldn't say I was writing myself into corners, which I know is a problem,
Hmm.
but I was writing myself out onto cliffs. I was writing my character. I kind of like, just ran out of juice.
Right.
Is what happened to me, and ultimately I had to set it aside and come back to it for myself. And it's been really hard during COVID to find the time too. What I've done actually is I'm getting up before 5 a.m. and I'll get up at 4:45, 4:30, whatever, and I'll come down here and I'll write for a couple hours before I have to start work or before the work emails start rolling in. So that's when I write. Um, so I'd say I'm like maybe half as productive right now during the pandemic as I was before. The train really gave that to me. But again, to the pantser or plotter question, one thing that changed was on the train. I eventually reached a point where I said, okay, I gotta just stop, and I gotta not start over, but I gotta take what I've done and I've gotta flesh it out, and I've gotta put a structure to it, and I've gotta plot this.
Hmm.
And over time there were story bridge. I don't know if you know the Story Bridge. It's a podcast, and there's a book, and there's all this stuff. But I got some good advice from that on how to just kind of force yourself to follow not formulas but structure.
Right.
And so that was really important. And even just the tools. I signed up for Mark Dawson's self-publishing formula. This is not
Yeah.
I'm not promoting it, but I'm promoting it, if you know what I'm saying.
That's still good stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God, the stuff I got from that, even if it's just the tools,
Right.
which tools to use. I'm trying Scrivener. So I was always writing in Word, and just switching over to Scrivener gave me the ability to kind of keep every chapter separate, but in its context globally in the story, to look at it, to assign a character to a chapter, and then see all the chapters just at a glance where one character was in it, and huge for me. So just a few little things helped me a lot, and basically it just helped me just get it done. And I, what I also did this time was I saw those cliffs that I'd ended up on, and I didn't want it to happen again for book 2 or book 3. I didn't want to be George Martin or Patrick Rothfuss. I wanted to make sure I was going to be able to deliver these things in a timely manner. So I kept going. Once I plotted out book 1, I plotted out book 2, and I did the skeleton for book 3. So I know where Loudon is at the end of book 3. I know where Janelle is at the end of book 3. I know where all these characters are at the end of book 3. And and another thing I wanted to do was I didn't want to be Robert Jordan, and I didn't want to just milk this thing till the end of time. And the first few books of Wheel of Time, so in love with Robert Jordan's characters, his writing, absolutely crazy in love with his story. All the little things, the sword forms with Rand, and I mean, such good, amazing stuff. But then he just kept going, and to say that that's pantsing is an understatement. It's almost like he's Dickens or something, getting paid by the word, and I didn't want to be that guy. So I intentionally have created something that's going to conclude in a satisfying way after 3 books, just so everybody knows that. I think for me that's important to what I'm trying to do. It doesn't mean I can't have characters continue in an additional series in a book 4-ish or whatever, book 1 of a new series, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to have these characters in these tangential novellas or whatever, like A Monk's Tale, my novella there. But I feel really strongly about kind of giving people something that's satisfying and it concludes.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite stuff has been that, David Eddings' Pawn of Prophecy, some of these stories that leave you hanging in this arc, keep going, leave you hanging, keep going, and then they resolve in a kind of a nice way. So I would aspire to people thinking of me in the same way as I feel about those writers, that I delivered something that's satisfying. So I ramble a lot on that one. So,
that's good. So let me ask you, what book in the Wheel of Time series did you finally tap out? For me, it was book 7. I just couldn't go any further.
I think I was like 8 or 9. Yeah, I don't know why I kept with it beyond there, and I don't know which one it was. If it was Winter, I don't even remember the names. But there was one where chapter 1 is this like a general or colonel or something in some some Imperial army. We don't know his unit. We don't know him. We don't know anything. And I'm like, who is this? Why is he introducing a new thread in book 8, 9, whatever? And it just made me so angry. I don't even think I finished that book. I bought it and didn't finish that book,
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I mean, come on, Matt Cawthon and Perrin, Ibarra, and I mean, those characters are such great characters.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, amazing.
Just such great stuff.
Anyway. Well, and I, not to get off on a tangent, I just love Robert Jordan's idea on writing. He had this idea of the hero's tale not being something that we should take for granted, and that was cool. And you could see that, but like you said, he just kind of went on for about 8 books too long,
And it's funny because at the time that Brandon Sanderson picked it up and finished it, I didn't even know who Brandon Sanderson was. Right. I hadn't read any of whatever what was it? I think. Yeah, I hadn't read any of those yet. I hadn't read any of his stuff. And the Stormlight Chronicles, I don't think those were. I think those came after. Mm-hmm. So I had no clue who this guy was, and I kind of want to go back and read the Brandon Sanderson ones now. Right. Now that I know what he's capable of on his own. I really like Stormlight. I love what he's doing with that. Anyway, just another digression, but yeah, he's a great writer.
So how do you come up with your ideas for your? for your books?
Good question. I think they're heavily inspired. I hate the word derivative. And yet I think everything is somewhat derivative of everything else. Shakespeare would be the first one to tell you he didn't come up with any new ideas, but he
Right.
was, just, acquiring ideas from Italy, from, mythology, from whatever. So I definitely was inspired by Tolkien. And, The Hobbit is the easiest to digest. Um, and it's a slog, unless you're really dedicated. It's a slog to read through the Silmarillion and a lot of the other
Right.
source book stuff. um, but it's also fascinating, and the world building aspects of that, I think, really influence me, right? So when I imagine fantasy, it's fantasy with elves and dwarves and giants, and I think that was colored by Tolkien initially. And I think Terry Brooks did the same thing, right? I think Terry Brooks's world roughly, especially before that it's actually post-apocalyptic and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. At first you don't know that, and so you're like, yeah, elves and dwarves and trolls and giants, and so that appealed to me too. So those are some of my favorite books that I was reading. So influenced as far as the setting, right? So when you say, where do I come up with my ideas? So that's like the setting, if you will, the trappings. I already talked about the trappings of the Middle Ages, just super appealing to me. Chivalry, knights, horses, swords, armor, fighting, Vikings, whatever. I just love that those trappings. Then as far as plots, I think, are tough. Like I think the pantser in me has to take the reins at the beginning, and I have to start with a character, and then I go from a character, and then I see what other character would be interesting to interact with this character, and then I build third character, fourth character, fifth character. What's another thread I could take? What's another thread I could take? So plot wise, it starts with pantsing, and then I just let it kind of go organically, and then I have to rein it in if I really want to go anywhere with it. But as far as the little details, and one of the things I love about writing and reading other people's stuff is the little details. And I did a blog entry on this on my website, but I'm influenced by like things that I see every day. Like I'll take a walk and I'll see a waterfall or a particular waterfall, and I'm like, oh man, and now I know where that's going in my book.
Yeah.
And I see a fallen log covered in moss, and you're like, oh my god. And it's the little things. Or when I was taking the train, there was this guy who is the inspiration for this dwarf character in book 3 that's coming. And it's just little things. I mean, just a guy I saw on the train, bam,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, that's my dwarf. And it's not, and then it just starts, something starts to crystallize it, and you just run with it. So, I had a visual impression of this guy on the train, and I just ran with creating a whole life around him, creating a whole character around him. So I guess for me, that's the easy stuff, and the most fun is are those details of the characters and the places and the mini plots. But when it comes to the larger plots and the character arcs, I have to like ratchet it back and downshift and really engage my logical self to crank it down and get the plotting done that I know I need. So
Well, and I think that's what makes fantasy so believable, and for your writing and your books, especially when you can take a dwarf, for instance, and you could say, oh my gosh, that's my boss, or that's my best friend, he's just a dwarf.
right.
That's what really makes fantasy cross those genres, and I mean, I guess maybe make it seem less nerdy, more palatable for the non-fantasy buffs out there. And I would say that you definitely do a good job of that. And I think a lot of people who end up being successful fantasy authors and cross genres, I think that's what we do, right? We draw from the people that we come into contact with, and we go, that person should be an elf.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, very cool. Awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what?
In fact, sorry, brief digression on
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
My brothers. So I have two brothers. My brother Chris was one of the founder guys. He's the one who got us playing D&D. He's the one who got me reading, science fiction, at least initially. Keith is my middle brother. He's the one that got me reading Terry Brooks particularly, but Chris got me on Tolkien, whatever. So he read when he first read when Keith first read The Crafter's Son. Chris was kind of helping me with early drafts and everything. But when Keith first read Crafter's Son, he's like, oh my God, Cedric is, and he would like say a name of somebody we know. And I'd be like, yes, that's part of him. Yes. And then he'd come to another part. He'd be like, oh my God, this person's that. Or, so it's totally true. Anyway.
Very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So how do you stay motivated? Especially, right now you said it's a lot harder to get writing done, which is maybe for a lot of people the opposite. I know that I actually have more time now that we're stay at home stuff. So what keeps you motivated? How do you stay motivated?
I think that I struggled with that until I kind of decided that I was going to just put book one out. And it was last, I think, August, and I submitted my manuscript to an agent, and he's a famous agent. He represents some of the top names. We may have even mentioned some of the names of the people that this person represents. And I've submitted a publisher. I've probably submitted to 7 or 8 publishers or agents over the years. And I always like do it, and then when the rejection comes or nothing happens, I kind of have to sit for a few months and just accept it or whatever. Anyway, so I submitted this one in August, and I said, this is it. I'm in my 40s, 50 now, but I was in my 40s then. And I was like, this is never going to happen. Are you doing this, Matt? Or are you not doing this? And I said, if I get rejected by this guy, then I'm going to self-publish. And literally, I set a reminder, and it was like September 15th. I put a reminder in my Outlook calendar, and I said, publish your book on September 15th. And so no word from the agent on September 15th. September 16th, I signed up for Mark Dawson's course, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. October, I'm submitting it to an editor that I found on Readsy, and I get this editor's feedback, and I'm publishing it. And I published it by December 7th. So, it's been really hard historically for me to remain motivated. I think now that book one is done and it's out and people are reading it and thousands of people have read it, which, it's crazy. 4,000, not whatever, 5,000. I don't even keep a track, but almost 5,000 people have either purchased it or read it. And then that's not counting the Kindle page reads, right? Because it's in Kindle Unlimited. So that's not even counting that. There's another 9,000 or something ridiculous who've read it on Kindle Unlimited, and that's crazy. And but it's hugely motivating to me. But it took that first leap. It took that first stake in the ground for me. And now this one, I just ripped this thing out. This is longer. It's a few thousand more words, and I ripped it out. And it's going to be published soon. And I'm going to give it to my advanced readers in the next couple of weeks probably, and then I'm going to get it to my editor, who I love that editor. I happened to stumble on with Readsy. I'm going to use her again. She did A Monk's Tale, and I'm going to use her for this, and then it's going to be out. So in the next couple of months, it's going to be out. So I guess it's been hard. It was historically hard for me, but it seems really easy now. Now that I know that I can do it, now that I know that I did it, now that I stuck the stake in the ground, I'm finding it a lot easier to maintain the momentum.
Very cool. And is your family pretty supportive of your writing?
Yeah, my parents and my brothers, I just mentioned them, have always been very supportive. My wife, my newlywed, my wife, Alicia is super supportive. I'm actually dedicating book 2 to her. My kids have variously read sections of the manuscript, which is cool. My 18-year-old has a copy of this, the proof copy of this as well, that he's reading through for me now. And he's a big reader and a big writer. I will say I just want to throw this out there that I think in my previous marriage, I think that my writing was something of a wedge issue, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure it's an indicator. I think it's a cause, right? I don't. I mean, I'm sorry, the opposite. I don't think it's a cause of what was wrong with my marriage. I think it was an indicator of the fact that
Yeah.
my marriage wasn't what it should have been. But I do think that from that experience, um, you know, I am not letting it get in the way of my life. So, you know, my ex probably felt like our marriage needed the time, and I wasn't giving our marriage the time anytime I was sitting down and writing. And so now I'm very careful to write during my commute, get up and write before anybody else in the house is awake. So for me, you know, I think that makes it easy. That makes it easy for my current family situation to be supportive of my writing.
Yeah. So you got to find that balance between.
And everybody's different, right? Everybody's story is different, but yeah, that's my story. But yeah.
Very cool. And so let me ask this next question in a couple stages. One, which could be a yes or no question. Do you have a desire to be a full-time author? Like, if this was your only income stream, would that be good with you?
I would love it. But personally, you know, I have a good job. I'm an IT director. I have good relationships with people at work. I've been working with a couple of guys on my team for almost 19 years. So I've been at this place for a while. I like my boss. You know, I like my peers. The work itself, I am an IT geek by nature. That is an aspect of who I am, and I like it. Um, so right now, I'm grateful to just be able to do this. Um, I think I'm always hoping that you know there's going to be an Oprah moment, or somebody, you know, somebody's going to discover me. You know, maybe not Oprah. I don't know. Maybe Oprah will take a hankering to fantasy or something. I don't
Yeah.
know, but you know, and you know, I look at the Google or the Amazon sales ranks of, you know, J.K. Rowling sales versus my sales and stuff, and you're like, wow, it's just a matter such scales,
Hmm.
differences of such scale that, yeah, if I ever achieved anything even close to that kind of success, you know, Patrick Rothfuss's success, Brandon Sanderson's success, never mind J.K. Rowling, right? I would totally leave my job. I don't know why I wouldn't, right? Why wouldn't I? But you know, right now I have a good job, and I enjoy it, and I'm well paid for it. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to do it. And and I'm really enjoying the writing. I want to get these first three books done, and then let's see what happens, right? Because I feel like I did leave everybody on kind of a cliffhanger at the end of the first book, and you know, some of the reviews on Amazon, any of the negative reviews, pretty much are because I left them on a cliffhanger. Most of them are about that. A lot of people don't like that, so I want to kind of conclude it, give everybody give everybody a 3-box set, maybe even combine it into a single, you know, edition, and then I can kind of take my foot off the gas and see what's going on, and take stock of you know, how much income that's generating, et cetera, right? But I'm pretending that it's not going to be successful enough that I should just continue to focus on my day job, I guess, is what I need to do. And I've got 3 kids, you know, 3 teenage boys that are going to be going into college, and that's not a small part of the, you know, equation and everything too, because I got the stability of this day job that I know I can rely on to see me through that.
So for you to go full time, then I mean, and you're I mean, Crafterson has been very successful, um, but I mean, a lot of things would then have to happen in
Right.
order. Yeah. Okay.
And financially, I mean, very successful in sales numbers, meaning the number of books sold and the number of people who are reading it and everything. But financially, I mean, it's not life-changing money. It's not.
Right. Right.
It's great. It's great. It's supplemental income. You know, it's great, but it's not life-changing money. It's not. It's
Right.
just not. It's not on that scale yet. That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, obviously, I hope it gets there, and
Right.
I
Right.
think it's. I mean, you got good stuff. I would assume and hope that it continues to move in that direction, and especially as you get 2 more books out. And yeah, the 3-book set seems to be a big thing right now. I've
Yeah.
actually been considering that myself. I don't know. So
All right.
Very cool. Okay. Um, so you mentioned some of this already, uh, but and you mentioned being able to manage your time and having to manage your time, and again, I think a lot of new writers, people that are just looking to publish, they get super motivated and they kind of push everything aside. What what sacrifices, and I guess this question is both, what sacrifices in terms of your writing, and then what sacrifices in terms of other things in your life have you had to make in order to get what you've done, I guess, in both life and in your writing?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think for me, you're right. I've already kind of laid the groundwork for the answer to this question, but I'm kind of the opposite of your classic vision of a starving artist, right? Craft first. I can be a pauper in the streets. I can live in a loft. I can, studio apartment, whatever. I craft first, man. And I'm kind of the opposite of that. I would say that my story is, to date, I've sacrificed my writing for everything else in my life. And you know, I think that by virtue of the fact that it's kind of a quiet thing I've done, and yes, okay, it's starting to show some success, but until it hit a level of success where it became my job, I think for me it has to be that way. It has to be something that doesn't impact my personal life, because I'm already working a day job, 9-10 hours a day or whatever it is. And now with the pandemic, I'm sitting down here 9-10 hours a day, and if I'm writing another couple hours, my butt is in this same chair for 12 hours a day. So, I think it's important for me. Two of my three boys are going to be going to college in 2021, so I want to make sure I give them everything I need to before they go. And then my 14-year-old, he's going to be a freshman this year, so I got a few more years with him in the house. But I just want to make sure, again, I'm newly married. I want to make sure my wife knows I'm there for her, and I want to enjoy living too. I don't want to chain myself to this desk so much that I can't, because writing is fun, but to me, there's more to life than that. So if I reach that level of success where writing becomes my job, then yeah, I'm down here 8-10 hours a day writing,
Right.
and it's my job. And I think that's going to work. I don't think I'm sacrificing anything, right? I think that's my job at that point. So anyway.
Right on. Well, I think that's, yeah. Anyways, I think your story is pretty cool and pretty amazing, especially after um, having talked to some authors that are, yeah, like you said, craft first, right? And I think a lot of people out there, hearing your story and some of the other people that I've interviewed can be very refreshing for a lot of burgeoning authors and writers, because I think there's this unfortunate kind of characterization that you have to sacrifice family, and you have to sacrifice other aspirations and things like this to be that artist, that creative artist that you are, that we are. And I think you're proof that you don't have to do that. I mean, you got to put your priorities into perspective, but it seems like you've done a pretty good job of that. So
Well, thank you. I want to take this opportunity to segue into so when people ask me what I read, and I'm talking about writing, I always bring up Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth. And I don't know if you've read it, but it's awesome, right? It's like, it follows like this young stonecutter who doesn't know anything, and he learns how to be a stonecutter. Eventually he's like an architect. It follows like a bishop who's trying to raise money for this cathedral they're trying to build. It follows all these characters, multi point of view type story, set in the Middle Ages, which of course I love. But you know another thing about that book is, it's like 150 years or something to build that cathedral, and this guy dedicates his life. The main character, the stonecutter guy, dedicates his life to building this cathedral, and it's 2 hours a day is the most I get to write. So I just want to wrap back around to the answer to this question. I write 2 hours a day at most. And it's not like I'm cranking this book out. It's not like I'm cranking these books out is what I'm saying is
Right.
you can chip away. You can do it, slow and low, and 1 or 2 hours a day is enough to, it's not enough to put out 7 novels a year. No, it's not, but it's definitely enough to get at least 1 novel written eventually. And then you got your stake in the ground like I had, and then you can go on from there. That's
absolutely. That's great. I mean, that's awesome. Do you have any, if you had a room full of your readers in front of you, what are a couple questions that you would have for your readers?
I love, it's funny because it's like your favorite series on Netflix or your favorite book or whatever, when you're talking to your friends around the water cooler or your family around the deck or whatever, I want to know who's your favorite character in my book. Like,
Yeah.
what do you like? What do you like about my magical system? What did you like to see next? In the same way that you're talking about Game of Thrones and, oh, Jon Snow, did you see what happened with Jon Snow? Or oh God, I love Ygritte or whatever, those are the same kind of conversations I love having. I had a friend of my wife's family gave their kid a copy of The Crafter's Son for his birthday a couple months ago. And he's an avid reader and he's like 10, I think. And he asked if he could call me, and he called me. This is actually my second interview because this kid this kid called me a couple weeks ago, and he's like, and he just wanted to ask me questions. He's like, how did you get the idea for Breeden's Magic? And he starts asking me all these questions, and I loved it, right?
Awesome.
I loved it. So for me, it's, which characters do you like? What, which little plot elements do you like? What parts of the story, what are gripping you? What are you enjoying? That's what I want to, and I want to get in the mud. I want to have those conversations just like you're talking about your favorite show or whatever, that's what I like.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. That's awesome. That's good. Hopefully maybe if he wants to be a writer, you've motivated him to do that as well. That'd be awesome.
There you go.
So finally, last question. Again, always kind of get some questions from younger writers. And so anyone that is watching this, that is thinking about being a writer or, at a later date, what nuggets of information, what advice would you have for them to be an author?
Yeah, I mean, I probably covered a lot of this. I probably laid a lot of the groundwork for this answer too, but I think it comes down to, you don't have to sacrifice necessarily. I think you can sacrifice exactly as much as you want, right? I think that, everybody's got their story and everybody's got their situation. And I have friends who are single and unmarried and don't have any kids. Now, if I'm one of those people, I probably got 20 books written,
Sure.
but at age 50, and I'm not saying they should be doing that because they're not writers or whatever, but what I'm saying is I think everybody's situation is different. And, but the main thing is it, put the stakes in the ground. Don't be overly concerned that you aren't making progress quickly, I think is really the bottom line. Write a story that you like, share it with people. Don't be afraid to share it. That's another thing. I talked to another guy who actually is an English teacher in Ohio, who's a friend of mine or who's the friend of a friend of mine from Kansas State, where I got my master's in creative writing. Anyway, and he was like, I forgot my thread where I was going, but he was struggling with sharing. That's what it was. Sorry, that's where I was in the thread. He was concerned about like somebody taking his story and running with it and making millions on HBO.
Oh, got it.
And I was like, dude, you know how hard it is to get your work out there? If I could get Netflix or Amazon or HBO to even read my stuff to consider it, but seriously, I don't be afraid to share is another thing. Chip away at it. Even if you got a chapter that you really like, share that chapter with people if you're a genre writer, share it with people who like the genre. If you play D&D, share it with your fellow D&D campaigners or whatever, or gamers, you play some, whatever, Diablo online, share it with your buddies, whatever. Because I think that helps sustain the motivation. It gives you the feedback that I think we all need. Because if you're in a little vacuum and you're insular and you can't, I think writers are all like that, right? We're all introverts on some level,
Right.
and I think that for me, two big things: chip away at it. Don't be afraid. Don't feel like, oh my God, I'm never going to write this thing. Like I said, it takes 150 years to build a cathedral. It took however many years to carve Mount Rushmore, especially if you're talking one human being doing this over a prolonged period of time. Don't worry about it. What are you in it for? Are you in it to make J.K. Rowling money? You could have your Oprah moment and get discovered and make that. That's true. But between now and then, just write and get it out there and share it with your friends, and don't be afraid to share it, and don't worry about copyright type stuff. If you've got an email with this PDF in it that you sent in 2006 and somebody tries to publish it, you've done something amazing to write something that's so good that somebody else is going to steal it and then try and promote it and then get it promoted and get it sold, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, those are probably some nuggets, but I think, it comes back to, you can prioritize it as much or as little as you want, and you can still write. I give it an hour or two a day. That's it right now. And yet I'm still writing. And as now shown a few times, this baby, I published book 1 in December, and I wrote this entire thing and got it to this point in that amount of time while keeping a day job and having 3 kids and a newlywed wife. Right.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Right. 7 months I'm here.
So,
and that's at 2 hours a day or whatever. Right. So.
Awesome. Well, Matthew Berg, thank you so much. Again, everyone that's watching this, links to Matt's website and Amazon page will be in the description. So make sure you scroll down or click the arrow and go down and visit him and support him as an author. And make sure you take the information that he's given you, because it's great information. And hopefully for all of those of you out there that want to be authors and writers, this helps motivate you to do that. And he's got great stuff, The Crafters Chronicles. I'm super excited about book 2. So again, Matt, thank you so much. And everyone out there, happy reading.